Welcome back. I'm in my garden and I want to show you how I take care of my tomatoes. I've been lacking a little bit and missed some big steps I should have taken with my tomatoes so I can produce more crop, more fruits, veggies, whatever you want to call them. I know we go back and forth. Are they a fruit? Are they a veggie? But I want to show you the mistakes I made, but also how to correct them so I can get a bigger yield out of my tomatoes. As you can see behind me, there is a ton of green. Obviously my zinnias up there. I do a variety of flowers in my garden with my tomatoes as well. It helps to bring in, oh my gosh, my dog. Lola, that's okay. Come here. Lola, come here. I know, you want to help. But there's way too much green in here. And what's happening right now is, you're fine, stop. Stop. What's happening right here is there's way too much green, and this is taking out not only from my garden, but the tomato itself. It doesn't need all these leaves. It's way too much for the plant. And I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna clean up my tomato plant and make it a lot more hardy to produce more tomatoes. It's the morning right now and the sun is starting to come up. My plant is still a little bit damp just from the dew in the morning, but the one thing you want to do is you want to trim your tomato plant in the morning. Best time to trim it. It's okay that it's a little wet. It's better if it's dry, but it won't be the worst, thing in the world. When you trim up your tomato plant, you want it to be a mild to warm day, not too cool, and especially not too hot. You don't want to shock your plant in either direction. So I would say 70s, maybe maximum 80s, as long as the 80s doesn't last all day. That's the best time to trim your plant, especially that's why I say in the morning. So highly suggest that. After I show you how to go about trimming your tomato, one thing I don't want you to do is water it immediately after or before. Try and keep this dry. I will do this right when all this little dew kind of evaporates. Or I could show you before. You shouldn't do that, but I'm trying to get you this explanation soon. But it's best because you could encourage disease or moisture or bacteria to linger if it's wet. The following day or morning, make sure that you water your plant in the morning. You don't want to water in the heat of the day, and you always want to water the base of your plant. Try and not water the leaves. Watering the leaves is the worst thing. That's how you kind of get that, little bacteria or mildews. You can see up here, my plant was getting watered up above and it's starting to develop, this little blight, which isn't good for the plant. It's not gonna destroy my plant, but it hinders it in producing tomatoes. The big reason you want to cut out all this extra growth is you want your plant to be able to breathe, and I also want my plants around them to breathe as well. But this just encourages too much moisture to be retained inside, again can lead to problems. They don't need these leaves on the bottom. These are all useless leaves. The big leaves you want to concentrate on, that you want to keep, is we're going to come all the way to the top. Oh, look at this one. This one's bad. I need to remove that one. And I'll walk you through how I remove everything. Keep coming up. This is what we want to leave on. This is the good growth. This comes all the way from the base of the plant. The big thing when trimming your tomatoes is do not remove that main stem. You will shock your plant. You will stop producing tomatoes because the plant will say, oh my gosh, I have to start over. You don't want to do that. So what we do is we come to the base. Obviously, like I said, anything on the bottom, little foliage, little leaves, little branches, take those out. But look at your main stems, like in the back here. You don't want to take out those, but you can take out the branches along the way. One thing that can happen to your tomatoes, and if you don't catch this right away, they choose what direction they want to go, especially when they're seeking the sun. So this tomato right here got blocked out a little bit because it was a little bit younger by some of the taller plants. So what it did was it said, I'm going to grow on the ground and reach out the sun here. This is the worst thing that could have happened to my tomato. You don't want your tomatoes to sit on the ground, especially in the long grasses like this. I've been actually mowing around it because I don't want to chop this off. It's one of the main stems, but it fell out of its tomato cage right here and just started traveling. What I'm going to try and do to help it is obviously trim out the leaves that aren't necessary, try and get it to breathe a little bit. I'll bring this up, try and support it, and get this grass around it as short as possible. That way it doesn't retain moisture. But this is a big mistake with tomatoes, and unfortunately it happened to me just because it fell out of its cage. As I talk with you here, the sun is slowly rising, but I'm going to now trim up my tomato to take out any excess foliage that isn't necessary. There's, oh, look, starting to get little mites. I'll talk about that next. That's not good. But take a look here. You know what, could you see those? I don't know if I showed you. There we go. See these little red mites? Those aren't good. I'm trying to focus my camera a little bit. The light's not helping, but yes, I want to get that off of my tomato. Here's a better look. These, I do not want. That's not good. All right, looking back, let's start trimming up this tomato and we'll deal with those little mites in a bit, but all this on the ground is unnecessary. We don't need it. Just keep going and taking out each one of these. As long as it doesn't have fruit on it, I am taking it out. Leaves, leaves, leaves. Oh, this one has a little bit of fruit. I'm not going to touch that one. Then come over here. You can see some more. This one right here. Can take this out. It's really starting to tangle in. This has to be re-supported back in to the plant. Oh, I'm sorry. I put that right here. There's some veggies there, and then take out this one. This is not off of the main one. It's a branch. If you look inside, that's a branch off of the main one. See this right here? I'm trying to reach here. Right there, that's where this one's coming from all the way down. Once these tomatoes start to ripen, I'm going to cut this whole thing off and let them, once they turn a little bit of a reddish, you know, obviously pinkish, then I will take this whole branch out because I don't want this anymore. It's taking too much nutrients to produce so little crop instead of working at the top where we want to. I'm going to show you a quick time lapse of how I trim up my tomatoes. As you can see, the bottom is becoming a lot more airy and exposed to the sun. Here are the results of trimming up my tomato. You can see through it, see through the base. That's really good. That's one thing you want to be able to do. That bucket off to the right is actually a huge storm came by and actually tipped my whole tomato over. So right now, just this bucket is kind of holding it up until I can put another stake in. But you can see how much I took out. And really, it didn't hurt anything. This is where it's getting all of its, you know, sun from, its nutrients. And now that I open this up a lot, it's going to prevent disease. And it also prevents bugs from climbing up. Like you saw earlier, I had a collection of bugs. And now I have to deal with those because they had access, easy access to climb up. And a nice moist area to live, which is bad. So tisk tisk on my part, but I'm glad I caught it now. Going over here, you can see I did this again to one of my other tomatoes. Over here, you can see right through, and you can see some of my tomatoes too. Leave the tomatoes, but take out the leaves. And again, it has another cage supporting it because of that storm. But if I trim these out earlier, that storm wouldn't affect it because there was so much of that wind to pull and against that it was a mistake. So I'm hoping that you can avoid these mistakes as I show you what I've gone through mine. But even right here, I'm going to take out even these bad little leaves. Not good. I'm going to take all those out. And then I have a few more tomato plants to do this with. And I will have a happy, healthier garden. And my plants underneath will be so happy because they receive more sun now. Coming back to these little buggers, they're called red spider mites, and you don't want them on your tomatoes. They carry disease, they can harm your tomato plant. One of the easiest ways to get rid of them is actually just giving them a hard spray with your hose and then letting that part of the branch, you know, obviously dry out in the sun again. Like I said, it's not good to wet your tomato plant during, you know, the heat of the day, but sometimes to get rid of these mites, you might have to. But in this case, I only found them on one single branch. This whole thing, I have a set of tomatoes right there. I'm actually just going to take this whole thing out, do a little sacrifice, because this is where they're living and I want to take them out. And then I'm immediately going to dispose of this branch. I want to take it out of my garden and away from everything. Here's my dog is even growling about this, but it's not all bad, Lola, it's okay. One thing I want to show you is, check this out. Because it's been sitting so far to the ground in moist grass, it actually started developing roots. Look at that. If I really wanted to, I could repot this whole thing and I could continue with another tomato plant. That's a bonus about tomatoes, is if you break off a branch accidentally, stick the whole thing in water, let it root a little bit, and you will have another tomato plant that, yes, will produce tomatoes. Another benefit of exposing your actual fruits to the sun is they start to develop vitamin C, and that's why you want your tomatoes in the sun. That direct sunlight is always beneficial to them, so get them out from under the shade and on top, just like this. You can see how much I cut away. Even over here, look, took all that out, all this out, all that out, and it's just creating a lot more airspace for the tomato and only bringing the most vital leaves that are at the top. These are the leaves that are getting the sun. All the other leaves are just sucking away from the tomato plant. Here's a look at from above how much work came into it. Took me about an hour, and this was being, you know, more on the cautious side, but you can see how much I cleaned up every one of my tomatoes, except for this one. This one needs to be worked on a little bit more. You can see it's struggling because it's laying on the ground, but this one cleaned it up a lot. And over here, you can see all that I took out and how much I opened it up.